start like this. It's very, very important to call your parents. Very important. It is really important. So now there's a story that has been covered on www.lookuptv.co.ke. Same story that I've seen on the Standard this morning, but we'll get into it and look at the details. Is that a family never spoke to the mom for 9 months. 9 months. Kept on sending money to the mom, hoping that she was, receiving the money and using it. Little did they know that the mom had already passed away 9 months back. Then the thing is, they kept on sending our money to her. So the question is, at what point do you stop speaking to your folks for 9 months? Even when you send them money via M-Pesa or via that account, aren't you supposed to call and say, hi mom, how are you? I've sent you some money. Have you received it? And is it enough for whatever purpose that you wanted to use it for? Or if it's not even for any purpose, when you're sending this upkeep to her, at one point, you gotta say, well, she hasn't even said thank you or even acknowledged that I've received this money. It's a sad story. You gotta read it this morning on the front pages of the Standard. I know we're going to look at it when we get to the papers this morning. But 9 months on, in her home that you would like to think was built by the family again, she was dead and they didn't know. Oof. Not even the neighbors, or close relatives. And the picture is right there of the late Jerry Githuka. And that was in Nyeri, Sorry, in Thika. Oof. It's not a story. Call them today. You can. It's all right. You can call them. Say hi. How are you? I'm also okay. Ooh. I'm telling you, life is difficult. Now, here's the thing. This morning, we're going to look at exactly where we are as regards the bipartisan. It's not a bipartisan. It's the second round of negotiations between the opposition and the government, with Raila Amolo Odinga and RUTO still going out ruling a handshake deal with RUTO. But the rules are already getting drawn from both sides as per where these talks are supposed to happen, whether it's going to be public conversation or private conversations. Again, that has already come up. We're going to look at that this morning and what essentially they're going to talk about. Look to see if, again, we do not know, but we're going to essentially look at it around a particular conversation this morning with our analysts who are going to walk into the studio shortly. I'll be introducing them. For now, let's take a tiny breather. Take a look at what you're waking up this morning in your dailies. Thank you very much this morning for starting your day with us right here on our Lookuptv. Now, let's take a look at the Daily Nation. This is the biggest story that they're waking up to, a ticking time bomb, they say. Unemployment pandemic. New data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics reveals an alarming trend. Now, despite thousands of new graduates entering the job market annually, nearly 3 million Kenyans continue to grapple with unemployment. Now, the latest statistics released in April underscore the urgent need to address a mounting unemployment rate that is outpacing the growth of the labor force. That particular story has been covered on the front page. This is what they're saying, 1.5%. By the end of 2022, Kenya had a labor force of 19.39 million, underlining a growth of 1.5% from the previous year. Look at 2023. At the start of 2023, unemployment stood at 2.97 million, a 3% increase from a year earlier. More than half of Kenyans without jobs, or 1.45 million people, were between 20 and 29 years, underlining the growing crisis of youth unemployment. And over the past 4 years to 2022, KNBS data also shows that the youth population, 77%, bears the heaviest brunt of the population that remains unemployed for more than a year. That particular story right there on pages that has been covered on pages 6, 7, and 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. Now, here's the thing. Azimio Kenya Kwanza first meeting set for Wednesday. That's exactly where it is now. President William RUTO and Azimio La Umoja One Kenya leader Raila Odinga's dialogue teams have tentatively agreed to hold their inaugural talks Wednesday, even as they continue to lock horns on the agenda and timelines for the negotiations. And remember, last week, the Azimio coalition had said they needed those particular talks to begin this Monday. That also intimated that what would have been ideal for them is to start those talks on the 1st of August. Looks as if now that particular timeline has been set for Wednesday. All right. The issues of discussion are essentially what they have not totally agreed on. All right. Now on pages 2 and 3, the forgotten victims of the attack talk of possible compensation as a reignited hope among those who were injured in the 1998 terrorist attack in Nairobi. That particular story has been covered on pages 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. Now, there is a story here for those who follow sport about how, Arsenal disciplined Manchester City yesterday. That's on the back pages of the Daily Nation to win the Community Shield. Good. On the Standard, there is a story here on how Raila rules out handshake deal with RUTO. That particular story has been covered on pages 4. So read it. That story of the mystery of Granny who lay dead in a garden for 9 months. Investigations by the DCI have now revealed that it took 9 months for the family of the deceased to discover that mother was long dead without them knowing. That particular story, by the way, has been covered on page 3 and also covered heavily on our website on www.lookuptv.co.ke. All right, on pages 10, you're going to read a story of a storm that is now brewing at the University of Nairobi. And there's a story here on pages 32 on what is now next for Niger after the ECOWAS threat. Read that particular story on pages 22. And our Arsenal now have the bragging rights over Man City, essentially, when it comes to the Community Shield. That particular story has been covered on page 22. Now, bomb blast, babies speak. 25 years on, that particular story has been covered on page 16. Now, teachers' pay slips are also mutilated beyond unmanageable levels. The cost of living is high, and any attempt to touch teachers' pay slips might not be received positively. There is an opinion here that you have to read on page 14 of the Standard. That's it this morning in terms of your dailies, and all the stories, by the way, have been covered extensively on our website on www.lookuptv.co.ke. For now, we take a tiny breather. Once we come back, I'll be taking you straight to the newsroom where I get to share with you some of the headlines that you're waking up to this morning. Welcome back. West Pokot Governor Simon Kachapin now wants local dialects introduced in the CBC curriculum days after the Education Task Force appointed by President RUTO to look into the CBC submitted its recommendations to the head of state. Now, the second time, Governor also calls on parents to fully support the competence-based curriculum in a bid to make it successful.
Ikiwa implemented vizuri itaenda kusaidia nchi hii kwa mambo ya uajiri. Itasaidia pakubwa kuona kwamba wale wote ambao wanapitia huu mfumo wanaelekea sehemu ambayo wenyewe wanaweza kujiajiri, ikiwa kwa ile pathway ya creativity, kwa na skills yako ama na ile talanta uko nayo. Wanasema mwacha mila ni mtumwa. Kwa hivyo lugha zetu ambaye tumeipata kama nchi ni nguvu yetu. It's our strength through our languages. As we refuse tribalism, but at the same time we know our languages or our diversity in languages is our strength. Kwa hivyo mimi sioni shida hiyo.
Moving on, the spouse of the Deputy President, Pastor Dorcas Brigadi Kashagwa, has expressed concerns over the state of the boy child addicted to drugs and substance abuse instead of building the economy. She's now requesting for combined efforts in the fight against alcoholism, drugs and substance abuse among the youths. Dorcas spoke during an interdenomination prayer at the Sagana State Lodge in Nyeri County.
And we have decided from everywhere in the 47 counties, we are going to fight with these drug monies until we bring our children back to their dreams and validate them so that our children can become economic drivers. There is nothing like when the entire young generation, it is packed in the streets and in the gutter while the economy is going down. I want to stand here and really thank you, Your Excellency, for the support and the fight that you have put for those ones who are selling drugs, those who are causing our children to be in alcohol. I can tell you the church is standing with you.
Now, 2 kids have been rescued by police after being locked in a house for 24 hours alone. Now, the kids, 9 years old and 4 years old, were left home when the landlord locked the house following rent arrears of 7,900 shillings.
Hello.
It took the intervention of police officers and neighbors, the efforts to rescue 2 minors locked in this house after landlord locked them in following rent arrears from the parents.
Mimi nilifungiwa nyumba na agents siku ya jana kwa rent ya ni 7,900. Nikafungiwa nyumba jana, wakabomoa kioo, wakaweka kifuli. Nikajaribu kuwapigia simu, nikaongelesha mzee ni mgonjwa wa hospitali. Mimi mwenyewe nilipata ajali miguu, hata siwezi nikatembea, nikaenda kutafuta. Mwenye anatutafutia pia ako hospitali. Walikataa kunisikia na wakakataa kunielewa. Wakaniambia vitu zako tunazitoa nje saa hii na hatukutaki hapa. Nikawaeleza, nikawaambia mkinitoa nje mimi nitaenda wapi na watoto, mzee ako hospitali, nitaenda kwa nani na mimi sina watu hapa. Wakasema hatutaki kujua na hatutaki kusikia, sisi tunataka pesa.
The plight of a mother to have the kids out fell on deaf ears. Patricia had visited her husband in hospital, who was admitted to Bristol Park Hospital for almost a week. But when she came back, she found the house locked.
Na wakafunga mlango na kifuli, na waambia watoto wako ndani, wakaniambia hiyo sio shughuli yao. Shughuli yao ni rent. Hadi leo mchana nimewapigia simu, wanasema hiyo si shughuli yao wanataka pesa.
The neighbors condemned the actions, terming them inhuman.
Na kwa sababu ya hali ya watoto wadogo kati ya miaka 9 na mdogo wake kufungiwa kwa nyumba, niliona kwamba sio salama Ndiposa nikachukua hatua, nikaenda kwenye kituo cha polisi Tasia, nikaripoti, na hivyo basi nikapata kupewa afisas ambao walikuja kuokoa watoto.
Hapo si seli walipelekwa wakaekwa. Hapo ni kwa nyumba wamefungiwa. Hakuna mahali mtu atapitisha chakula ape hao watoto. Watoto wameteseka hiyo.
Patricia ni jirani yangu. Huwa namwachia watoto wangu sometimes wakati nimeshikana kikazi. Hivyo. Ananikalia na watoto vizuri. So wakati alifungiwa nyumba, actually sikujua. Leo ndio amekuja kwa kazi yangu akanielezea, na haijanipendeza kabisa. Haijanipendeza.
Mimi kwangu sioni kama ni mzuri. Kiutu hiyo ni mbaya. Kwa sababu mtoto akikosa kukula hata asubuhi peke yake unajua hawezi ishi kama ako na wazazi. Hata ukiangalia mzuri anauliza mamangu. Labda mama yake amekuja kwa mlango anachungulia watoto wanalia ndani. Hiyo nayo sio mzuri. Hiyo inafaa itakiwa na hata stable. Kwa huyo amewafungia.
Police in Tasia rescued the 9-year-old Faith Cheptoo and 4-year-old Tyrus Kipchumba, reuniting them with the mother. Brian Amwai, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Bumula Member of Parliament Wamboka Waname has castigated President William Ruto over what he termed as a double-speak and dishonesty. Speaking in his constituency, Waname now wants Raila Odinga to call off the talks with the government and resume the weekly anti-government demonstrations as the Kenya Kwanza coalition remain uncommitted.
Unganisha watu. Sindio? Huyu mzee akifinya button unatetemeka mpaka kwa roho. Simuona juzi? Anasema tunataka dialogue. Wakati mzee amekubali dialogue, rais anaanza kupiga kifua kutusi Raila. Mumeona jana akipiga kifua akitusi Raila. Na yeye ndiye amesema nataka dialogue. Raila has nothing to lose. In fact, mahali imefika mimi naambia Raila, kaa ngumu bwana. Wacha mwanaume ndiye akupatie heshima. Kaa ngumu utingize yeye sasa mpaka kwa nafsi. Kenya ni kila mtu. Sio sawa? Raila kae. Ametingiza yeye siku 3 peke yake mzee. Rais tumbo kwa joto. Anasema tafuta Raila my brother. Raila kukubali na kupitia Paulo Lese kwa passage. Kukubali tuongee, anaanza kupiga kifua. Akiwa huko, hamtanitisha. Hapana, Raila call of dialogue. Wanaume waonane. Call of dialogue Raila Odinga. Hao watu wakupatie heshima. Kama Kenya itakuwa hivyo, wacha wanaume wamenyana.
Azimio leader Raila Odinga has ruled out any form of handshake with President William Ruto, insisting that the opposition's main concern is the cost of living. Speaking in Nyamira County, Odinga called out the Kenya Kwanza government over violence meted on his supporters, noting that they will ensure justice is served to the families who lost their loved ones.
Ati wa Kenya wengi wameona uzito kwa upande ya gharama ya maisha. Sivyo? Wananchi walikuwa wamelia sana, gharama ya maisha imepanda juu. Bei ya unga, bei ya mafuta, bei ya sukari, bei ya stima na kadhalika. Wakaikawa juu sana. Na tukasema mzigo umekuwa mzito. Tukamwambia bwana Ruto na watu yake ya kwamba Wakenya wanasikia uzito. Waswahili walisema ati kibebacho kikivuja ni nafuu kwa mchukuzi. Mzigo nataa yapunguzwe. Sasa hiyo ni makosa. Hiyo ni makosa. Ukimwambia mtu ati ni mzigo mzito sana, umefanya makosa. Sasa wananchi wakasema usizidishe tena mzigo. Manake kwa bunge wameenda kwa bunge wameleta tena sheria mpya ya kupandisha mzigo. Kupandisha ushuru ambayo inawekwa kwa chakula na kwa bidhaa muhimu. Tukasema isifanyike. Sasa anaenda kwa bunge kule, anachukua wabunge wengine wanapatia hongo ili wapige kura ya kuunga mkono hiyo mswada. Sasa ndio tukasema kama na hiyo sasa wabunge wamepitisha sheria dhidi ya wananchi. Ndio tukasema wananchi wanaweza kufanya nini? Kufanya maandamano. Maandamano iko ndani ya katiba yetu, iko ndani ya sheria, ni halali. Ukisema mimi nataka kufanya maandamano, nitakana polisi akulinde wewe. Aje wewe uko pale, mnasema tutaanza kutembea kutoka hapa mpaka pale, na polisi aje pale alinde nyinyi. Sio kuja kupiga watu na risasi. Ya kuua watu ni kazi nzuri. Kali ya kuua watu ni kazi nzuri. Hata siku moja yeye hajasema kusema pole kwa wale ambao watu wao wamekufa. Yeye anasema hawa watu wataniona mimi, nitawakalia ngumu, wataniona. Sasa wewe ni mtu gani? Unasema wewe ni Mkristo. Kila mara kwa mara unakuwa na maaskofu, unakwenda kanisa, unapiga magoti chini, na pande hii nyingine wewe unaua watu. Unasema wewe ni Mkristo. Kama hiyo sio unafiki, sijui unafiki ni kitu gani? Mtu ambaye anafurahi kama watu wamepigwa risasi na wameuawa, na watu unaishi naye katika taifa moja, na anasema anafurahi, tena anatoa pongezi kwa polisi kufanya kazi mzuri.
President William Ruto now says that the country's economy has been stabilized. Ruto spoke at Sagana State Lodge during his 5-day tour at the Mount Kenya region. The president also championed for his Finance Act, saying it has plans that would steer the country forward and make the economy debt-free.
During his 5-day tour of the Mount Kenya region on the second day, President William Ruto toured Sagana State Lodge, assuring the country that his government has made the necessary arrangements and now the economy is stable.
Niliwaeleza ya kwamba kazi yetu ya kwanza ni kudhibiti uchumi wa taifa letu, to stabilize the economy of our country. Kwa sababu tulikuwa pahali hatari sana. Mahali madeni ilikuwa nyingi na mpango wa vile tutayasuluhisha hatukuwa nayo kikamilifu. Napenda kuwaeleza ya kwamba we have stabilized the economy of the Republic of Kenya.
President Ruto championed for the Finance Act, assuring the country it has plans to ensure the country pays its debts on time.
Tumehakikisha kwamba mambo ya kukopa madeni kulia, kushoto, mbele na nyuma na juu na chini tumekomesha. Unajua tuko na deni kubwa tulikopa inafaa kulipwa mwezi wa 6 mwaka ujao, ya $2 billion huko mwezi wa 6 mwaka ujao. Sasa wakati tumeketi chini tumepanga na tumesema hii deni hatuwezi kungoja mpaka next year. Tumeanza sasa kuipangia vile tutalipa mapema. Credit rating agencies wale wamezoea kutumia ukora kuongeza madeni yetu, wakasikia tuko na mpango ya kulipa deni kabla haijafika siku yenyewe. Sasa last week wameandika mabarua kulalamika, mbona Kenya inataka kulipa madeni mapema?
President Ruto said the cost of living will be coming down anytime as the government gears itself for a bumpy harvest in the coming days.
Mpango yetu kwa mambo ya kilimo, nilimwambia Rigiji, brokers, cartel, wakora, watoke kwa chai, watoke kwa kahawa, watoke kwa mambo ya maziwa yetu, tupange hiyo kazi ifaidi wakulima wetu. Amefanya mkutano ya chai, ameita watu wote. Amefanya mkutano ya kahawa, anapanga ya maziwa. Ndio tuhakikisha kwamba hiyo sekta yote tunaipangia vizuri. And I want to give you my commitment ya kwamba pale tunajua ndio inabeba watu wengi. Kilimo, tukisuluhisha matatizo yetu ya kilimo, tutaweka utajiri kwa watu wengi katika taifa letu la Kenya. And that's what we are going to do.
Later, the president held a meeting with different leaders to strategize on how they will implement development for the Mount Kenya region.
Mambo mengi ya maendeleo ya taifa letu la Kenya na hasa ya mlimani hapa, nitaketi chini na hawa wabunge na magavana wetu na mawaziri hawa, tuketi hapa tukubaliane mambo ambayo tumeandika katika mpango yetu ya plan ya kupeleka Kenya mbele.
That all the Mount Kenya people require is for the promise to be kept. There are roads that you promised during campaigns. There are dams you have promised us. There's resources. We will be discussing them for the next couple of days.
Upande yangu wa maji, niko na all these dams that are called colonial dams. His Excellency has asked for an audit as we are planning to roll out the bigger work of the mega dams.
The president is set to conclude his 5-day tour of the region on Wednesday.
Let's summarize like this then. President William Ruto now says his administration would not allow any chaotic anti-demonstrations amid scheduled talks with the opposition. As Ian Ketani now reports, Ruto insists that his administration will continue to fund development projects through taxes collected.
Just a day after Raila Odinga threatened a return to the streets if the talks between both sides do not bear any fruit within 30 days, President William Ruto slammed the opposition over the demonstrations, insisting that any form of violence is against the law.
Haya mambo ya maandamano ambayo tuletea fujo, naamini ya kwamba kuna sababu ilifanyika. Ndio tukubaliane kabisa once and for all ya kwamba there will be no more violent demonstrations in Kenya. Hatukuwa tumepata nafasi ya kusema. I think we are now agreed that there will be no more violent demonstrations in Kenya that destroy property, that destroy people's lives, and that destroy our public property. Sisi wote tunasimama upande moja. Sisi ni nchi ambayo tunafuata sheria. Sisi ni nchi ambayo imesimamia katiba. Sisi ni wanademokrasia. Na sisi ni nchi ambayo tunaweka amani na tunaweka umoja.
Speaking during a Thanksgiving service at the Sagana State Lodge, Ruto now says no more violent demonstrations will be allowed, while calling on the opposition leaders to denounce violence. With overtaxation being one of the issues raised by Azimio, President Ruto insists that development projects in the country will be funded through tax collection.
Jua mzee Kibaki, wakati alichukua usukani kama rais, tulikuwa tunakusanya bilioni 200 kama taifa. Akatuambia tulipe ushuru. Nyinyi mlisikia, nyinyi mnajua. Lipa kodi. Hiyo ndio ilikuwa lugha ya mzee Kibaki. Akatusukuma wakati alikuwa anaondoka baada ya miaka 10. Tumetoka 200 billion, tumefika 1 trillion. Tumeongeza ushuru yetu 5 times.
With inclusivity being advocated for by Odinga and his team, DP Rigathi Gachagua called out the opposition, noting that one can only rape from where he saw.
Watu wakipiga kelele ati sisi ni wengi kwa serikali ya William Ruto. Yes. By choice, by strategy, by design. Yes. Si tulikaa chini tukapanga. Hii maneno ni ya kupanga.
Senate Speaker Amason Jeffa Kingi rubbished the talks, insisting that the opposition was not concerned about the cost of living.
Kwa hivyo rais, hii maandamano unaona wasitudanganye, ni visababu. Manake mwanzo hawajakubali na hawatakubali. We want you and we pray for you, Mr. President. Nothing will come out of these cold talks. But something will come out from this plan that the president has.
Ian Keitani, Lookuptv.
So, in my career, the very important questions that you need to ask yourself for you to file a complete story. In fact, it is how you analyze a situation. So they say, when you tell people about what happened or what's about to happen, you gotta tell them something. Who? In fact, you gotta start with what, all right? Then you go to where, then you go to who, all right? All the way, we call it the 5 W's and H. And when, very, very important, and how. Good. Now, You see, the talks, I've already figured out who. Very clear. Yeah, the 10-member committee, complete. Good. But then, you are going to talks on this Wednesday when the what? Nobody knows. In fact, they have not agreed on it. Where? they have not agreed on it. They're still thinking about where these talks are going to happen. In fact, how these talks are going to happen, they're still thinking about it, because there's a conversation of, are they going to be public? Are they going to be private? The Azimio coalition is saying, you only be talk to the media after we are done. So the how? Not done yet. When? Not clear as well, because the Azimio coalition has said, well, we need to start Monday. In fact, for them, they said, let's start on first. That first date expired, and now the government has said Wednesday. Good. That's what we're talking about this morning. If you listen to Amazon Kingi saying, Mr. President, nothing is going to come out of those talks. So where are we as a country this morning? We're going to be joined by Benson Kenyanjui and also Mr. Eric Mungai, who's right here in the studio, so that then we can get to talk about the 5 W's and H. When, what, where, how. We know the who. So let's talk about that. Eric.
As the night falls, we come to life to bring you a comprehensive broadcast from the numerous events happening across our 47 counties.
When it breaks, it matters, and each story is important.
If it's Thursday, join me, Nancy Lima, and my able panelists as we break down the law jargons and analyze the Constitution in a way only you can understand.
The news cycle never stops, neither does time. We cover each and every sector and present to you factual and accurate occurrences. This is where facts win the day. Join me,
Nancy Lima,
Ian Keitani, Tuesday, every Wednesday,
Thursday,
as from 9 p.m. on The Insight, only on Lookuptv.
It's time to restart, rescale, and talk about health matters.
If you get exposed to high fluoride between 0 to 12 years, your teeth will be permanently discolored.
Wake up, eat healthy, and keep fit. With the help of health experts, we will help you understand different health conditions and how to treat them.
Dental fluorosis is an irreversible condition that affects the outer layer of your tooth.
This is your health journal. My name is Wanjugu Washira.
Every Wednesday from 8:30 p.m.
Everything will be well discussed here on this platform.
Only on Lookuptv.
So the story we're telling today is a story of passion in practice that grows into business.
We have partnered with the Youth Fund, talk to as many youth as possible and work with them, hold their hand.
It is an expose of captains who have decided to take on challenges in different sectors and industries within the country.
My mentors had also not started as CEOs. They grew up and they showed me how they grew in the organizations. So that's what motivated me to actually do international business. And it was a good experience.
As an individual, support in bridging the care gap, part of me also to offer a solution. I want to leave this world a better place than I found it.
This is the Captain's Arena. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage.
Hi, and welcome to Tujenge Home. your number one show when it comes to all things architecture, real estate, property development, interior design. You get it right here on Tujenge Home. When the food is ready.
You want to serve them?
Dinner is served. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go.
Are you a junior secondary school, a college, a TVET institution or a university and you want to advertise your intake? Book now and advertise with us today on both Lookuptv and all our digital platforms. Call us today on 011 0430 158, 011 0430 158 or email us on sales@lookuptv.co.ke.
All right, let's talk about it then. It is Wednesday. The inaugural talks are essentially gonna begin. But then, there are issues here that have now come up that we are ready for talks, when in reality, everything around it looks as if we are not essentially ready for these talks. That's what it looks like. Because let's look at what is already agreed upon. The what is not agreed upon. The Azimio coalition is saying that indeed we have our issues that we have to talk about. Whether the government side has agreed then to take in these issues is still not clear, because after the Azimio coalition released their statement and the Kenya Kwanza also released their statement signed by Kimani Ichung'wa, nobody has come back to say, now as we go forth to those talks, we've agreed then that these are the issues that are going to be tabled. No, that's not clear. Then again, second is the where. So even as the government has announced that those talks are going to begin Wednesday, we do not know where these talks are going to happen. But then there's another issue as well, the how. The Azimio side is saying, well, these talks are going to be very private. We only speak to the media after we've agreed on those particular issues. That's not their feeling from the Kenya Kwanza side. There's a feeling that they need to be publicly addressed. There's a public debate. Good. That's where we are. Whether that's a good setup for the talks to happen Wednesday, we do not know. What I do know is that I do have Benson and Mr. Mungai in the studio this morning. Let me start with you, Mr. Mungai. What ground is that for negotiations when you seem not to agree on the basics of a negotiation?
Thank you, Simba. It's always good to meet the lion on a Monday morning.
It is, man.
And you know, the beauty about today's Monday is that we've spent a whole weekend enjoying muchele and nyama at the State Lodge, which you remember previously was a preserve of a few members in this country. But now our Rigi G, the man, has invited all of us to go and enjoy muchele and nyama.
Wait, were you there?
Of course, I must go and enjoy the largesse of the state. And I am happy even as I sit here today. It is not like the one of former President Uhuru where he said the yeye alikuwa nakula nyama wengine wanameza mate. Now this time we are the ones eating meat.
Hold on, I had one statement from one of the guys that we interviewed at that state lodge. He said, najua tunataka tuwaambie mtu hawezi kula tu njia la barabara.
It is good when you share the spoils of the state.
Sema hata Yesu kabla aongea na watu alikuwa ananulia chakula.
Yeah, that is true. He fed before we went for the service, we were really fed. And I must say, if this is eating state resources, then literally we are at it.
Okay. Yes.
Karibu, I'm happy to be here this morning.
Happy to have you around.
Two things are happening this week.
Okay.
One is there is mention today of the tax, the fellows who have gone to court to oppose progress. And secondly is we are having discussions, talks about talks. It is not clear what exactly we are talking about. One side says we want to discuss about the cost of living. The other side says no, cost of living is not on the agenda. And we are yet to see how the talks will culminate, or either on Wednesday or thereafter. We don't have a venue. One side is saying we want to meet. One side is saying we are not meeting in Serena. We can as well meet under a tree and in a public limelight. The other party, I saw the Right Honorable Raila Odinga yesterday.
Yeah.
He was actually very reconciliatory, saying we are ready to talk. Let us speak. I'm sure we'll be discussing, we'll be going much deeper into that, but first is to welcome our viewer this Monday morning.
Azam, I'll be coming back to you. Ben, how are you doing, sir? Happy to have you around. Were you also at the State Lodge during speak?
To start with, I've always preferred the name Fanyamambo Kinuthia.
Fanyamambo Kinuthia.
The more I tell people it's my official name, the more they do not understand and accept that it is. But a very good morning.
It's good morning.
Still the same Fanyamambo who likes wearing sweaters so that I look like a student. and I'm happy to be here on a Monday morning. But it worries me deeply to have a conversation on a Monday morning and the people who were supposed to have been speaking about one man, 1 shilling, 1 vote, are speaking about 1 man, 1 soda, 1 mchele, na ikuwe na kanyama hapo juu. This is sad. It's the saddest state of affair that what was considered to be the region that was the wealthiest region, Mount Kenya region, economically, has been reduced to a people who want to have a conversation about 1 man, 1 mchele, 1 soda, na ikuwe na kanyama hapo juu. That for me is the lowest we have ever gotten to. And as we get into that debate and this conversation, I think we need to recalibrate our people and tell them that something is extremely, extremely, extremely wrong with your head. And we need to get in there and re-engineer the thinking of our people. Because there is a Esau in the Bible who sold his birthright for a meal and then realized, wait a minute, just that 1 meal, and after a few hours it's digested and gone, and my problems remain. So our people need to start thinking. It was never 1 man, 1 plate, 1 soda. It was 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote.
Let's table the discussion there. All right. And this is how we're going to get in. The issues that I want us to look at this morning that the president actually spoke about this weekend, and it's a good thing that Fanyamambo is officially introduced as into that conversation. There's a story that we ran this morning that is called the State of the Economy. Story number 2. We're going to get into it this morning. And the president signed off in a very interesting manner. If you listen to him, he said the only thing that is left now, because I've already fixed the economy, is to send Raila Amolo Odinga home as the only thing that is a tax for me now. But even before we get there, let's go back to the first story that we ran this morning on how President William Ruto now says his administration will not allow any chaotic anti-demonstrations amid scheduled talks with the opposition. As Ian Ketani now reports, Ruto insists that his administration will continue to fund development projects through taxes collected. Let's take a look.
Just a day after Raila Odinga threatened a return to the streets if the talks between both sides do not bear any fruit within 30 days, President William Ruto slammed the opposition over the demonstrations, insisting that any form of violence is against the law.
Haya mambo ya maandamano ambayo tuletea fujo, naamini ya kwamba kuna sababu ilifanyika. Ndio tukubaliane kabisa once and for all ya kwamba there will be no more violent demonstrations in Kenya. Hatukuwa tumepata nafasi ya kusema. I think we are now agreed that there will be no more violent demonstrations in Kenya that destroy property, that destroy people's lives, and that destroy our public property. Sisi wote tunasimama upande moja. Sisi ni nchi ambayo tunafuata sheria. Sisi ni nchi ambayo imesimamia katiba. Sisi ni wanademokrasia. Na sisi ni nchi ambayo tunaweka amani na tunaweka umoja.
Speaking during a Thanksgiving service at the Sagana State Lodge, Ruto now says no more violent demonstrations will be allowed, while calling on the opposition leaders to denounce violence. With overtaxation being one of the issues raised by Azimio, President Ruto insists that development projects in the country will be funded through tax collection.
Jua mzee Kibaki, wakati alichukua usukani kama rais, tulikuwa tunakusanya bilioni 200 kama taifa. Akatuambia tulipe ushuru. Nyinyi mlisikia, nyinyi mnajua. Lipa kodi. Hiyo ndio ilikuwa lugha ya mzee Kibaki. Akatusukuma wakati alikuwa anaondoka baada ya miaka 10. Tumetoka 200 billion, tumefika 1 trillion. Tumeongeza ushuru yetu 5 times.
With inclusivity being advocated for by Odinga and his team, DP Rigathi Gachagua called out the opposition, noting that one can only rape from where he saw.
Watu wakipiga kelele ati sisi ni wengi kwa serikali ya William Ruto. Yes. By choice, by strategy, by design. Yes. Si tulikaa chini tukapanga. Hii maneno ni ya kupangwa.
Senate Speaker Amason Jeffa Kingi rubbished the talks, insisting that the opposition was not concerned about the cost of living.
Kwa hivyo rais, hii maandamano unaona wasitudanganye ni visababu. Manake mwanzo hawajakubali na hawatakubali. We want you and we pray for you, Mr. President. Nothing will come out.
That's it. You listen to Amason Kingi right there. Let me start with you, Eric. So I do not know how we're supposed to interpret that message. Because here you are speaking from the president when it's now clear that those talks are supposed to start Wednesday. The Azimio coalition said, if we do not have anything from these talks, we're going to go back to the streets. But you then, as Amason Kingi, stands in front of the president and tells him, but you see, I'm telling you, nothing is going to come out of these talks. Same question that I asked, that if you look at the mood and attitude of the guys from the Kenya Kwanza government, all the way from the first failed bipartisan talks up to where we are right now, it is the same mood, it is the same attitude, that they haven't recognized the importance of these talks. Because we like to think, Eric, that even Amason Kingi would be praying that indeed we get a solution from these talks. But he's telling the president, I'm telling you, nothing is going to come out of those talks. So what is he saying? Or what is the president not saying then this morning?
Thank you, Simba. One of the things, so the president has been on a working Mount Kenya tour, starting all the way from Githurai and now in Sagana State Lodge.
Yes.
And one of the things that has come out from that tour is the rhetoric from Mount Kenya leaders that there will not be any talks. In fact, every time they stand on the podium, they ask the people, nyinyi mnataka mazungumuzo? Then the people respond in unison, hapana. Nyinyi mnataka handshake? Hapana, sisi hatutaki handshake. Wacha nione kwa mkono ni wangapi wanasema wanataka handshake. Then the people say they don't want the handshake. But you must remember, in negotiations, you have to, you must have have the hardliners, so that you finally, at the end of the day, you can come to an amicable conclusion.
Yes.
Are there hardliners? Of course, they are hardliners. If you look at one from the government's perspective, they do not understand why there needs to be talks in the first place. And this is the discussion that even as Kenyans we need to start having. One, do we really need an election after every 5 years? For instance, I vied for governor of Kiambu in the last general election. Is it in order for me to go and camp on Kiambu's headquarters and demand from Wamatangi that we need to have talks on how we need to lead the county of Kiambu? The MCA who was running in my ward, does all those other MCAs, do they need to go and have a discussion with the MCA who won and say, look, we need to have talks about how we can lead this ward? And if we do not agree on the talks, then we'll make sure that we paralyze your ability to lead, so that you come and we have a discussion. That is a larger discussion that we need to have in this country. Do we need an election after every 5 years? But nevertheless, and having said that, Obasanjo did come and there were negotiations, and part of the outcome of those discussions was that we are going to have talks about talks. Now, both sides, including the likes of Sifuna, always as a leader, you have your attack dogs that you send to say things that ordinarily you wouldn't say yourself. So whether you're discussing about Sifuna, whether you're discussing about Babu Owino, or whether you're sending bloggers or leaders like Robert Alai, you have people that will always take a hard stance. And then you have people who will say, okay, at the end of the day, let us talk. But my question would also be, why do we need to have behind the camera talks? Because if the matters are concerning the state of the nation, why are we going behind the table and locking other people out and saying we will call the media after we discuss so that we tell you what we have discussed? What is this that you are hiding? Because if the negotiations are on behalf of Kenyans and for the goodwill of Kenyans, then let us have open discussions. Let us call the camera people, let us discuss, let us lay issues on the table. And by the way, I've always told you I'm a staunch Kenya Kwanza supporter. I am a life member of UDA. So it's not like I hide which side my bread is buttered. At the end of the day, what we seek is a solution that can enable Kenyans to move forward, both economically and socially. Now, if having a discussion in public is going to enable the public discourse in a manner that takes the country further and in the right direction, then so be it. So the question is this: what are these cards that we are putting below the table? What is this that we are hiding? What is this that we cannot say in public, which we must say behind closed doors, and then inform the media through a statement after we are done discussing?
We're coming back to you. Fanya mambo.
And I think it takes a lot of grace and a lot of composure and a lot of self-restraint to listen to UDA people. Yesterday, and I have tried watching these clips, and they bring a lot of pain to my heart, because you leave State House on what you call a working tour. Working tour, which work? What budget does UDA have of this is the first time they've read their budget, a horrible one that has gone to court, a very horrible budget that has actually gone to court. It's the first time they've read all the projects they are launching. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta's project. The Githurai market was started in 2019. Now it was completed in December of 2022. So what are they saying? What work are they going to do? You're launching what was already done before you by somebody else and taking credit for it. And by the way, you come to the people of Githurai, standing at a roundabout, jobless. Jobless because they have nothing else to do, and they have come, and some of them are actually mobilized. And then instead of asking them about work, instead of asking them about the price of unga, instead of asking them about bursaries. By the way, Githurai comes from the larger Roiro constituency, where men and women had a stampede fighting for bursaries. And because the constituency has more than 400,000 people, people were getting bursaries for as low as 500 shillings, whereas the people they are supporting, Akina Kipchumba Murkomens of this world, are elected by 20,000 people, 30,000 people, and their people are getting bursaries of 25,000, 30,000 shillings. The people of Mount Kenya have become absolutely silly and insane. They don't know what is good for them, and they don't know what matters to them. You come to a roundabout to chant songs in support of a president who comes from a constituency with less than 100,000 people, and he gets 100 million shillings in CDF disbursement. You are in Roiro constituency, 500,000 voters, and you are getting a similar disbursement of 100 million shillings. And you are there chanting that Raila ndio mbaya, shida yetu ni Raila, shida yetu ni maandamano. What is wrong with your head? Raila Amolo Odinga was the person who was pushing BBI down the throats of these people so that Roiro constituency now would be getting 400 million shillings, and these people would stop having a stampede fighting for 500 shillings. Now the people who are fighting for 500 shillings in bursary are fighting the man who has been campaigning for them to get a lot more allocation in bursary. The man who is talking about the price of unga is the man they are calling Kemudo Kegoroki. Hatutaki kuongea na ODM, hatutaki kuongea na watu. What is wrong with the people of Mount Kenya? You are buying unga at 250 shillings. Rigathi comes and tells you in your face that unga has gone down to 159. And you're looking at him and clapping for him and telling him our principal agenda as the people of Mount Kenya is to refuse to have talks with the opposition. I think tunafaa kwanza tutoe BVR. That BVR kit, that thing has to be disbanded. There's no need to check the identity of who is voting. What we need to do now is to have a kit that helps us to check whether we have brains first. So that we have a brain measuring kit, and then we check whether you are supposed to have a vote or not. Because you cannot have people who are fighting the person who is trying to bring down their own cost of living. You cannot have people who is advocating, you are fighting the man who is saying that you people are 400,000 in a constituency. You are being led by a man who comes from a constituency with 100,000 people, or 80,000 or 70,000. How many people voted for Aden Duale? How many people voted for Aden Duale? And this is the man telling you, nyinyi wa matu wa Mount Kenya, hamuhitaji PBI, because they are giving their children bursaries of up to 60,000, full scholarships. Your people in Githurai and Roiro, sasa mumepewa soko ambayo ni Uhuru alijenga. By the way, talking of a working tour, the president comes hot on the heels of launching a dam worth 1.5 billion in Kericho. Then he comes to Mount Kenya. What does he launch? A borehole. Upper Muranga. A borehole is 2 million shillings. All my neighbors have boreholes. I mean, even MCAs don't come to launch boreholes. Bandis hack more than 100 boreholes in Nairobi. When did Bandi go to launch a borehole? Who launches a borehole? Mkubwa wa nyumba 10 anakuja ku launch borehole. Why are you taking the president and demeaning him and reducing him to the level of going to launch boreholes in Mount Kenya? There is no dam there. But in Kericho, it's a dam 1.5 billion worth. What is wrong with the people of Mount Kenya? I come from that region, and sometimes I look at our people and ask, what is wrong with your head? Then he proceeded to Keno Muranga. The people of Keno, right now, price of tea and coffee, you need to check, has never been paid this horribly. This is the first time that the prices of tea and coffee have gone that low. Yet, on the international market, they've gone high. And the people of Keno and Muranga are being told about Raila Amolo Odinga. They are being told about talks. They are being told about maandamano. They are not being told about their coffee and their tea and why the prices have gone down. And they are busy cheering and saying, hey, ni serikali mulichagua serikali ya kufanya nini? Kuamaliza. Now they are being told that housing, and you've seen all these new taxes, are being backdated to 1st of July. And you are cheering for that government that is pushing you to the wall and saying that our problem is Raila Amolo Odinga. Let me tell you, even if, God forbid, Raila Amolo Odinga was to rest today, and one day he will rest because he's a human being, then we shall wake up and realize that our problem was never Raila Amolo Odinga. It never was. And that's why the tongue will always turn to the aching tooth. And what is the aching tooth? Maandamano. They don't like maandamano because it speaks the truth. Yes. And finally, there was some show on some local Kikuyu station at night. And you know what? The bulk of Kenyans were watching an Arsenal match.
I'm not going to touch on it. I'm not going to touch on it. Here's the thing. The question I asked is, but I'm going to give you 45 seconds then to actually respond to that question should these talks be public talks from the beginning to the end?
First and foremost,
yes,
the price of unga is already a public talk. Nobody here is unaware that unga is expensive. Sugar is expensive.
Yeah.
Nobody is unaware that there was public participation and Kenyans said we do not want those houses.
Yes.
I have kept challenging on this station and many others that we be shown a clip where Kenyans raised their hands and said we are okay with an increment in taxes so that we can be built for houses. Nowhere. So you do public participation to make it look like people have contributed to your agenda of taxing them and killing them with taxes, and then you come and implement those taxes by force. Yet Kenyans have said in all public participations they do not clearly want. These talks, for me, I don't really care whether they are public or private. The disillusionment in Kenyans is real.
Yes.
And what this administration should be doing is not coming to the right to ask Kenyans, munataka maandamano ama mtaki, munataka handshake ama mtaki. They should be asking Kenyans, what is your principal problem? And Kenyans will tell them, we don't want to buy fuel at 189 shillings. Kenyans will tell them, we don't want to buy unga at 250 shillings. And the problem is you come and ask and tell Kenyans whether you want maandamano or not, whether you want Raila or not,
yes,
whether you want handshake or not. And by the way, their principal worry, and Rigathi Gachagua has made it very clear, is to share government. It's the only worry they have. Ati hakuna serikali ya nusu mkate. There's nothing else they are telling Kenyans other than their own interest, that we have come to tell you that we don't want to share government with other people. Then when will you address this thing that used to be called bottom up? Now there's only up, bottom went.
Eric, but the issues I want you to respond to here as quickly as you can. First is that President William RUTO is launching Uhuru Kenyatta's project, which when we looked at majority of the projects that were being launched or been launched in the early days of President William RUTO, yes, you can backtrack them into Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure. Is that a concern that now we are riding on Uhuru Kenyatta's project as a promise to Kenyans?
Thank you, Simba. First is to say that it is a good gesture that you provided Fanya Mambo with some water. I think now it's a good time to sip some water.
Eric!
And I will. Because I can feel it's getting hot in here and it's about to get hotter. First, let me say this.
Yes, yes.
I am always mesmerized when people lecture UDA supporters, and Fanya Mambo has said something very interesting, that he feels a lot of pain in his heart when he hears a government supporter speaking, and especially when they are supporting government agenda. And I want to bring him sad news. Unfortunately, he better have his heart checked, because at the end of the day, it might actually pain more. Having said that, is to say that you've asked a very valid question on whether the president is launching the former president's projects.
Yes.
First and foremost, government is a going concern, okay? You do not have, that's why we don't change civil servants. It's only the head of state and government who changes from time to time after the cycle of every 5 years. So government is a going concern. The KRA that was collecting taxes during Uhuru's time is still the same KRA that is collecting taxes now. And in fact, we are even going to do much better this time round than the previous KRA. The government that we are castigating now has really struggled, especially in terms of meeting the gaps that were, and the holes that were sunk in the former regime. Coupled with the handshake brother, they got us into a really big hole and into a really big mess. And so the first thing that the president has had to do in this government is to make sure, and you played a clip here while we were entering, when the president is talking about we have been able to stabilize the economy. Because remember, we borrowed heavily during the previous regime, and allegedly even half of the money, the Eurobond money that came into this country, that we borrowed, did not find its way into this country. And therefore, it is imperative. Remember, even right now as we speak, it is only that the appeal court went ahead to give us an opportunity for Kenya Kwanza to exercise in terms of the budget. And we still have a case that is coming up for mention today. Now, there have been concerted efforts by people who are very angry, by people who are very bitter, by people who do not believe that people called hustlers can actually come up and constitute a government. And I understand the bitterness. I mean, I would be bitter. If I had everything at my disposal and I was unable to make government, I would be very bitter. Now, I am mesmerized and I am amazed that when people go out there, they view those of us, you know, they have coined a word they are calling Kenya Kwanza supporters tugege. You know very well, and you recall correctly, that during the previous regime, there was Sagana 1, there was Sagana 2, and the only thing that came out of Sagana, if you recall, the only thing that came out of Sagana, apart from the fact that for you to get into Sagana, you had to be deep state, and you had to know, you know, it's only the fat cats that used to go to Sagana, and only Bentens, courtesy of enjoying big government largesse, that used to go to Savannah. And what came out of those Saganas, it was abuses, day in and day out. So what I'm trying to say is this.
I want us to take a tiny breather. I'm going to come back with you, because I'm still looking for that particular response from you on whether indeed it's okay for the president to launch the government's project. Remember, the question was,
it is okay. The answer is it is okay.
On the question of we promised, we are doing it. That's on the back of that promise.
We are doing it.
Once we come back, then we'll be getting it to him so that we know exactly whether it's okay for us to sit here and say, well, majority of these projects are essentially what were promised to the Kenyans during those campaigns. So as we come back right here on The Morning Brief, my name is Simba Elijah Charles. Can I get join us online at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms.
Hapa panajulikana kama Napetao. Hapa tumekuja na zaidi ya chakula 500 ili kuhakikisha wakazi hapa angalau wanapokea kitu cha kutia mdomoni. Unavyoangalia hali ya anga sehemu hii, jamani, kuna ukame. Wakati wowote ambapo wewe unacheza loto, 25% ya pesa ambazo unatumia unakuja kufanikisha shughuli kama hii.
Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
How do women do it? Will the real superheroes please stand up? Welcome to the best show on all things women.
You can.
Now we have to tell you, on our show, we're not just talk. We're mothers, wives, working women, your hosts, and the list goes on. We also know how to relax and have some fun. It's living the life. Yes, it is.
So the story we're telling today is a story of passion in practice that grows into business.
We have partnered with the Youth Fund, talk to as many youth as possible and work with them, hold their hand.
It is an expose of captains who have decided to take on challenges in different sectors and industries within the country.
My mentors had also not started as CEOs. They grew up and they showed me how they grew in the organizations. So that's what motivated me to actually do international business. And it was a good experience.
As an individual, support in bridging that care gap, part of me also to offer a solution. I want to leave this world a better place than I found it.
This is the Captain's Arena. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. to the morning drift. We were still at the point when we're discussing about the state of the economy in respect to the talks that anticipated this Wednesday. And Mr. Mugai, there's an answer that didn't come out correctly. That if you listen to majority of the statements that are coming from the president when they are launching these projects, they frame them as if these projects are essentially emanating from the promises they gave to the Kenyans during the campaigns. That nobody somewhere is then standing and saying, you see, projects like these are the ones that we're going to continue to support. So not essentially our projects. It was a vision of the previous government.
You know, Simba.
Yes.
Yesterday, the president was in one of the local media stations, the Kikuyu dialect stations. And in fact, that station is reporting that they haven't had ratings and reviews and viewership as they received yesterday night. So don't worry about azimio propaganda telling us that people are watching Arsenal. In fact, even myself, I was not even aware there was an Arsenal match because I and my village mates were simply waiting for His Excellency William Ruto to address the nation. But having said that,
spoken like a true Man United fan.
Yes, but of course I'm a Manchester United fan.
No wonder. No wonder you didn't watch. All right, let's do this.
But you know what we always say when you see some people on top of the table, you know someone, it's just like when you see a turtle is on the table. But that's besides the point. The issue is this.
Yes.
The president was asked the same question that you've asked me on whether or not he's launching the former regime's projects.
Yes.
And he did explain that 1 year into elections, most of Uhuru's projects had stalled. Why? Because we had borrowed beyond our capacity. Time was coming for us to be able to pay. We were unable to repay the debts that we had borrowed. We were actually struggling. And so in essence, most of those projects had stalled. But let me say something here. You know, I have heard Fanyamambo allude to several factors. And especially what irks me is to imagine that we who support government, you know, sometimes we leave our brains at home and we put them on when need befits. But I want to say categorically and state categorically here that we always carry something between our ears wherever we go. You see, let us even pick those things that we keep on throwing around, because sometimes it is good to demystify the propaganda that is bandied around. We've spoken about coffee. We've spoken about tea. We've spoken about milk. Let me ask you, Simba, you know, it's good to be honest people, and it is good sometimes, and the issue of drugs, it is good sometimes to be honest. And what is honesty? Honesty is asking ourselves, what is the major cash crop of Central Kenya or Mount Kenya region? Now, if we address those issues, and we address the issues of the value chain, then do we in essence put money into the pocket of Kenyans? Because what Azimio is trying to do is to sidetrack government so that they move away from the issues that affect us and detract us into issues that are of no importance to us, like talking about talks. For instance, let us talk about milk. We all know who is the milk for the longest time, who has been the milk cartel in Kenya. I mean, it's an open secret. No one is hiding. Secondly, let us talk about coffee. How many companies control coffee in Kenya? From marketing, from sourcing, how many companies control coffee in Kenya? And when we say we want to dismantle these companies because we need to sell our own top quality coffee across the world, we receive a lot of backlash. But when you dig behind the scenes who is responsible for destroying coffee sector, you remember when the former president was in power, he did set up several task forces to deal with coffee. And even as he did that, he made sure that one of our governors who was at the key and at the front of fighting, you remember the former Nyeri governor who died over coffee reforms
yes.
in Kenya.
Yes.
You remember him?
Yes.
And he did not receive any support from the national government. Why? Because he was trying to fight cartels. You remember Mwangi Wairia? When he tried to introduce something in Murang'a about milk.
Yes.
That is where his war started. And therefore, let us be honest people when we discuss matters that affect the nation. Always, you will see that when government wants to put money into people's pocket, and specifically Mount Kenya region, where it hurts the most, in Kikuyu we say, if you hear someone wailing, egekaya nenume. It simply means if you hear someone wailing the loudest, it means it surely must be pinching and someone must have beaten them somewhere. And I can tell you the wailing, the crying is not going to stop.
Yes.
I want to tell our detractors, it has just started. It has just started.
Yes.
It is going to get better.
Yes.
It is going to get messier. It will be messy.
Fine. I want us, just before you come in, I want us to go back to what the Daily Nation essentially woke up to this morning in terms of the big headlines. I don't know whether my director can splash that particular headline so we get to look at it together in terms of how the economy is bleeding in terms of unemployment, and they're saying that this issue of unemployment is now becoming a thorn to the government, and that's what they're saying, the unemployment pandemic. That essentially follows the statement of the president yesterday when he said we have already fixed the economy. Went ahead and said that the only thing that is left then is to send Raila Amolo Odinga back home, because from where we stand it, well, the economy has already been fixed. Well, when we look at those particular headlines, what are we supposed to read in as much as the statements of the presidents are concerned? Because then we have a right to question them. That you're saying you fixed the economy at this time, when the first thing that essentially we point out to a fixed economy is an open sack. Fanya mambo.
To start with, I sometimes laugh when I look at UDA supporters because I think they have a very short memory. You remember when President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta walked into the markets and he found people selling by the roadside using a wheelbarrow. His mind told him that what these people need is a market. So he built the market so that you can have a decent space you wake up to every morning. You have a toilet, you have a sink. At that time, the people who were trying to sell the wheelbarrow to us thought that kama huyu anauzia kwa wheelbarrow, shida yake ni wheelbarrow. So they gave them wheelbarrows to keep them on the side. And then people like Kimani Ichung'wah came and looked at them and said, Anachomo anajua shida yao mtu ni umbrella. Now you are government, you are second in command then. Then there was Kimani Ichung'wah who was in budget. And instead of thinking that what these people need is a market, they give them a wheelbarrow, and if it's too hot, they give you an umbrella branded with his name. That's what UDA did for us. Now they've realized in retrospect that, wait a minute, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta was right. What these people needed was actually a decent market, and not the wheelbarrows and umbrellas that we were giving them, and like a hand washing basin. That time there was COVID. What they needed was a decent market. And I'm glad that they have come now to the realization and have accepted that those things we were giving then were not making sense. They needed something sustainable, because you guys are in government and you're the controller of budget and you have money to build markets, not to give people wheelbarrows. But it's fine. I no longer see them with those things nowadays.
Yeah.
Now by this, sijui kwa nini hazitumi petroli na petroli iko juu. Those are the only things they should have around. Anyway, moving on to the stabilization of the economy. You know, when someone comes and tells you I've stabilized the economy, and you're looking at them and saying, wait a minute, things were slightly easier for me a year ago than they are today. So you're telling me you've stabilized it. How? The prices of basic, you know the way Mwananchi understands a stable economy?
Yes.
It's very simple. Don't give him statistics. He just wants to know that he's able to afford his basics better now than then. And he wants to know that before he'd probably walk 5 kilometers to get a mjengo that's ongoing so that he can fit in. How many kilometers he's walking now? Because what happens when an economy is stable? People start constructing. And so any person who is mtu wa mkono, you'll find more construction sites. You have to walk less to get to a construction site. Or because when you have money in your pocket, disposable money, you start thinking of projects. Even maybe fencing. Ulikuwa umefence na mabati, now you want to fence na mawe. That's how you know of a stable economy. Now you're telling someone who is walking a lot more kilometers to get the next opportunity than they used to before, that the economy has been stabilized, and is looking at you and is thinking something is wrong with you. This unemployment is a ticking time bomb. When you stand as a president and say there will be no more maandamano in this country, we are not going to allow, what you are doing is like, sorry to give this example, to find somebody who has got a running stomach and then you decide to stitch the exit so that it doesn't come out. What's wrong with you? This exit is a sign that there's a running stomach. So when you are stitching the exit and saying sasa hakuna kitu ingine itatoka hapa, what will happen is with time you realize that you didn't fix the problem. You fixed the exit for the problem. And then you are saying you fixed the problem. The president has to get to the point where he accepts and understands that unemployment in this country is a time bomb.
Yes.
You cannot have such a huge population. Today, if I come here as a politician, niseme, niko na mia, how many people are available? You saw what was happening at KICC. You just need to have a stupid idea and say, I have a chicken that can lay purple eggs, and each purple egg is 200 shillings. Everybody will queue. That is a ticking time bomb. Those are the indicators of a growing economy. So when you come and tell us you've stabilized the economy and people are queuing at KICC to have their eyeballs checked and they're in the thousands, when people have jobs, how comes you did not go to KICC? It's because you have a job. The camera people in this studio have a job. They have something to report to. Anybody who was at a Mujengo site did not go to KICC to have their eyeballs checked. Everybody who has a working opportunity did not leave their house to go to KICC to have their eyeballs checked. But the bulk of Kenyans, they are idle. Unamwambia asiende maandamano is the only opportunity he has to leave home and go to the streets and dance. He's never had a chance to play football on the road. So we must start dealing with the problem,
yes,
not the manifestation of the problem.
Pretty much. Now, gentlemen, I want us to go into the next part of our conversation this morning. And the only way we're going to get there is then by looking at what Raila Amolo Odinga spoke about the talks this weekend. Now, this conversation that is taking center stage from both sides, that indeed one needs half of the government. The Nusu Mkate conversation, this is exactly what Azimio leader Raila Amolo Odinga ruled out, that any form of handshake with President William Ruto, insisting that the opposition's main concern is the cost of living. Now, speaking in Nyamira County, Odinga called out on the Kenya Kwanza government over the violence that was meted on his supporters, noting that they will ensure justice is served to the families who lost their loved ones. Let's take a look at that story and then come back and say, if Ruto is saying no handshake, and Raila Amolo Odinga is saying completely no handshake in these talks, then why are we talking about it once we come back?
Ati Wakenya wengi wameona uzito kwa upande ya gharama ya maisha. Sivyo? Wananchi walikuwa wamelia sana, gharama ya maisha imepanda juu. Bei ya unga, bei ya mafuta, bei ya sukari, bei ya stima na kadhalika. Wakaikawa juu sana. Ndio tukasema hii mzigo umekuwa mzito. Tukamwambia Bwana Ruto na watu yake ya kwamba Wakenya wanasikia uzito. Waswahili walisema ati kibebacho kikivuja ni nafuu kwa mchukuzi. Mzigo na taa yapunguzwe. Sasa hiyo ni makosa. Hiyo ni makosa. Ukimwambia mtu ati hii ni mzigo mzito sana, umefanya makosa. Sasa wananchi wakasema usizidishe tena mzigo. Maana yake kwa bunge, umeenda kwa bunge, wameleta tena sheria mpya ya kupandisha mzigo. Kupandisha ushuru ambayo inawekwa kwa chakula na kwa bidhaa muhimu. Tukasema isifanyike. Sasa anaenda kwa bunge kule, anachukua wabunge wengine wanapatia hongo ili wapige kura ya kuunga mkono hiyo mswada. Sasa ndio tukasema kama na hiyo.
Let's come back and talk about it then, because that's Raila Amolo Odinga saying, look, stories for handshake, they're not there for us. We're just concerned about the cost of living and the way that you're running this particular government. That's it. But then, listen to Ruto is vehemently speaking about how they're not going to allow a handshake, which is what makes me ask you this question, Mr. Mungai. What is this talk of handshake in these negotiations when both the two sides are saying, well, we don't want it? So why are we talking about it?
It's because I have always said on this show,
yes,
it's it's difficult for a leopard to change its spots. If you see the spots of a leopard, then chances are high that must be a leopard.
Yeah.
And what Kenya Kwanza has seen are the spots of a leopard that is a tradition for it to kunyemelea the chicken shed, and we know how it comes. I've always told you that if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, then it surely must be a duck. Now, if you want to know it is true that they are after a handshake, every time they issue a written statement, azimio issue a written statement, there is a word that never lacks, the word inclusivity. If you read their statements, every time they issue a statement, the word inclusivity is always at the forefront and in bold.
Yes, and they've been quite specific on it, that these are the issues I want to talk about, inclusivity.
No, don't worry.
Among other issues.
You know,
yes.
You know, Raila is a master. I've told you before, Raila is a master of camouflage.
Yes.
In essence, he's an opportunist. If you recall, when they were with our handshake brother, Uhuru, when they shook hands, the price of unga was very high, and that time Ruto was on the other side of he was on the receiving end. If you recall, at that particular time, when Raila was asked about the issue of the cost of living, he said, "Hao ni watu wanamweka huko nje kama umbwa." That is what he said, and he was on record. But now, all of a sudden, the cost of living is a big issue. Now, how did the previous government go about sorting the issue of cost of living? One is that they introduced subsidies on the millers. When an audit was done, including even on fuel, when an audit was done, there was a miller somewhere in some part of this country, they were claiming from government 4 billion Kenya shillings. Now, when an audit was done, it was found that the capacity of that mill in itself cannot exceed Kenya shillings 50 million. So it tells you this was a cabal of thieves conniving, that they were masquerading as people who are going to save the country, but in essence stealing from ordinary Kenyans. And I put it to you that this government is actually really trying, especially on the issue of bringing down the cost of living. And I must agree something here on this set, that one, cost of living is a major issue. Secondly, unemployment in this country is also a major issue. And both of them we cannot run away. Now, the point of departure is in how we go about solving those two issues in the country. We have said time and again, the price of unga can only be sorted at the farm, because most of the times, unfortunately, we import a lot of the products that we feed on.
Yes.
And because there are crises in other parts of the world, you are aware that even right now getting non-GMO maize, whether in Brazil, whether in India, whether in South Africa, has become a tall order, because other countries are saying they only have enough for their own country's consumption. India, a month ago, banned the export of rice from India to other countries. That has also created a shortage. And so what we have done as a country, and I am happy we are headed in the right direction, is to make sure that we produce enough to feed ourselves and enough to export to other countries. But if we go about the way the former regime was going about bringing down the cost of living, I can tell you for a fact that will not work. Secondly, on the issue of unemployment, I have to admit it's a big issue, and not just for this regime, but even for past regimes.
Yes.
Where do you get young people to go for maandamano on a weekday consistently? You always have young people going for maandamano. Where do you get these people? It tells you there is a bigger issue that needs to be solved. But how do we go about as a country? And that is why it is important for us to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just enough to be shouting.
Do you expect the same honesty from the president, that he should stand and tell us that he's fixed the economy when he hasn't fixed it?
But you know, it depends on your interpretation of fixing.
Yes. He didn't interpret it.
Let me tell you something, Simba. You know, there's something as Kenyans,
yes,
sometimes we fail to understand.
Yes.
And that is because a lot of lies are sold to us.
Yes.
If Kenya defaults on its loans today, if Kenya were to default on its loans today, like many other countries in Africa have done, we are going to get into a bigger problem. Why? Number one, even importing the food becomes an issue because our credit rating goes down.
Yes.
Even what we are complaining today as cost of living, typically we would have no country to go back to. And therefore, when the president says he has stabilized the country, what he means is we are getting our fundamentals right for us to be able to move this country forward.
Why can't he say it? Why can't he say it like that?
Sorry? No, that is what is what is that? You see, the challenge with news, Simba, I've always told you.
Yes.
You know, the challenge with news.
Yes.
We go for bites and what is catchy. But you see, in terms of
making a mistake of interpreting the president's
no,
message.
we are not making a mistake. He's put it on record himself and said we have stabilized the country in 1, 2, 3 ways, which I have explained to you.
Yes.
Now, when you sort out the fundamentals, it becomes now very easy, because remember, when you build a house, you have to dig a foundation. Now, chances are high when you dig a foundation, you do not put a foundation on top of the soil layer. You have to dig down, get a solid foundation so that you can build the building up. And that is what, in essence, the president has been trying to do. But unfortunately, we have evil men and naysayers in this country whose job description, unfortunately, is to be a distraction to not only this government, but even a thorn in the flesh of previous governments.
Pretty much.
But we know now.
To you, because we only have 1 minute so we go for this tiny breather. I'll be coming to give you the right of response so that we say, well, when we hear the president speak and say that I have fixed this economy, the only thing that is left is to send Raila Amolo Odinga home, what does that mean? How do we interpret that message on the back of headlines like the unemployment issue that we have in this country at this time? Let me take this time then to recognize our online community that is watching us at this moment so that I can actually get to talk about you this morning. Let me say hi to you, Mandere KE News, who's saying, Simba Kiaga, good morning. They're in the studio. I like your, thank you very much. Rajab Dasalem Koryo saying, Kirinyaga wanapigania chakula ya relief food ole wao. That is a George Keraka who's saying, let them read 1 Kings chapter 12 verse 1 onwards and comprehend what the government that we're cherishing too. I can't really make what you meant there, but we'll keep on reading this particular comments as they come in as we go on with the conversation. Once we come back, Fanyamambo is with us then as a right of response to whatever Mr. Mungai is submitted. Good morning.
As the night falls, we come to life to bring you a comprehensive broadcast from the numerous events happening across our 47 counties.
When it breaks, it matters, and each story is important.
If it's Thursday, join me, Nancy Lima, and my able panelists as we break down the law jargons and analyze the Constitution in a way only you can understand.
The news cycle never stops, neither does time. We cover each and every sector and present you factual and accurate occurrences. This is where facts win the day. Join me,
Nancy Lima,
Ian Keitani, Tuesday, every Wednesday,
Thursday,
as from 9 p.m. on the Insight, only on Lookuptv.
Today we are hosting the RUTO Foundation as they do a food distribution to the community. The community involves people from Huruma. Huruma is where we have the home for the aged. So quite a population from the home are getting the gift packs. Most of our children come from Gidogoro and Huruma. These are informal settlements. Honestly, these parents have not been working. The number of children that will come to me, even the ones who are not in school, and tell me, Mwalimu, we have not fed for 3-4 days, is quite huge. So this will go a long way. A family that has not fed for 3 days, they will at least get a meal. We also thank RUTO. This is the second time that you're coming, and it always makes a difference. It always makes a difference.
Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
right, welcome back to the Morning Drift. We are still pushing the minutes, we're still pushing the conversation right here on the show. Now, here's the thing. The question about the sentiments of the presidents this weekend on exactly what they mean when he says that I've already fixed this economy. It is just now a task of sending Raila Amolo Odinga home. And the conversation of, if both of them then do not want a handshake, why is the conversation of a handshake quite popular in their conversations? Fanya mambo. Let me look at it like, let me ask from that perspective the same question that I asked Mr. Mungai. When you say I have fixed the economy, what does that mean?
It means you go to State House.
Yeah.
You tell your ministers that they do not know what they are doing in their ministries, and you tell us that you know your ministers are not working, and then you extend their term, you give them performance contracts to continue not knowing what they are doing, and then those are the people who have fixed the economy. That's it. Well, that's one of the interpretations. The second interpretation of fixing this economy is what our good friend was telling us about us importing unga or maize. And I'm asking myself, and I have had, and I want Kenyans to indulge me for 30 seconds. If you can look at me in the face, let us have this conversation. In every household, unga ya ugali is the variable. The constant is kitoweo. So that when you're taking rice, there's a stew that accompanies. When you're taking chapati, there's a stew. When you're taking spaghetti, there's a stew. When you're taking mashed potatoes, there's a stew. Whatever it is that a Kenyan takes between Monday and Saturday, and I can tell you it's not every Kenyan who takes ugali on every other day, there is a stew that accompanies food. That is the constant in every house. If Kenya had a problem of food security, we would be saying there is no stew because the stew is constant. It is there from Monday to Sunday. But we keep discussing the variable, one variable, which is unga, one, which is probably taken twice a week. Kuna mchele, kuna nini. We have a problem with one variable. Why? Because maize can be hoarded, maize can be imported, maize can be put on a ship. Maize has a long lifespan. Maize is, and I can tell you, the only problem we have in this country is because maize is a trade commodity. Full stop. If potatoes had the longevity of maize, that you would transport them from Brazil to here, I can tell you Kenya would be having a conversation about potatoes. But it doesn't have that longevity. The reason we are importing sugar is not because we don't have enough sugar in this country. Is because it is possible to play with the price fluctuations, and it is possible to import it, it is possible to put it on a ship. Kenya does not have a food security problem. Kenya has got traders in maize and sugar and food commodities that are not perishable.
Yes.
How comes we're able to provide enough ndanias for every house? Tomatoes, what changes in tomatoes is just the price, but they are there constantly. Every other household has got a kitungu. Hata ukienda kwako nyumbani, there will be a kitungu today. Why are we not having a conversation about a kitungu that never misses in every meal? There are times we miss ugali. Even when you live here and you go for lunch, you probably have pilau, not ugali. The truth is we don't have a food security problem in this country. If we had a food security problem, we would be this. And how are they solving it, by the way? They are solving it by importing what we have. Now, who said Kenya has a cooking oil problem? Who said so? We have so many companies manufacturing cooking oil. Wakaleta na mitungi hata wamejaza garbage in this country. Those mitungis, in fact, they should pay us for environmental pollution. There's a lot of mitungis they have brought full of oil that Kenya does not need, that Kenya never asked for, just because it was duty free and there's someone who wants to make money from it. That's how they are stabilizing the economy, by killing existing cooking oil producing companies. This government, to be honest, is not really keen on helping you and me.
Yes.
Because if they were, things would be very different. I can tell you the economy is not stable. That 60 years after independence, Kenya is yet to make its own bicycle. You know, one of the things that causes us to have problems is because if we make 10 shillings, we spend 6 shillings outside the country because we are importing fuel. Even the clothes we are wearing are imported. 60 years after independence, Kenyans are wearing underwears from other countries. We don't have our own. So we need to get to a point where if we make 10 shillings, We only spend 3 shillings outside the country and 7 shillings is retained here. And what do? That Finance Act, when I went to make contributions, were in my constituency because they had come, the budget committee, and they always do. And I keep those videos. I told them, you are so keen on taxing Kenyans. Why are you not keen on increasing taxes on imported things? Why are we importing toothpick? We export bamboo, they use it to make toothpick, they bring it to us. We export hide, they use it to make shoes, they bring them to us. Why don't we tax those things that Kenya can make so exorbitantly so that we kill importation? And by the way, you don't need to make factories in Kenya. I've always said it. In 2020, when we had a problem of masks, all that happened is China refused to sell their masks. And I'm telling you, small companies sprouted, hata kuna zingine hapa Kikuyu, that started making the mask. And you could tell a Kenyan mask. But after a period of 3-6 months, you could not tell an imported mask from a Kenyan-made mask. They had become very beautiful. Kenyans even went to the extent of making with kitambaa, you remember? Beautiful, yes, with the Kenyan flag. Why? When you ban importation of those things that this country can make, Kenyans become innovative. This thing of talking of manufacturing as if you're supposed to come and open a big hall and create... Have you seen like the machine for making toothpicks? Like a small thing you do like this and then they come out like chips on the other side. You don't need to go to China for that. So all we need to do, and we were telling them when they were making the Finance Act, you will make money. But you will not make money from taxing Kenyans who are already not able to put a meal on the table. Go and try to make that money from taxing the Chinese and the Japanese and all those people who are importing things into this country. Make it so expensive to buy a handkerchief from China. And you'll see Kenyans cut material and start sewing handkerchiefs, and we'll have handkerchiefs that are made here.
Yes.
Why do I have to blow my nose from a handkerchief that came from Taiwan? It's a problem. And when we were small in primary school, I made a mwiko. That was my art and craft project, standard 7. Now, every mwiko in the supermarket is an imported mwiko. This administration is just doing, and I keep saying it is because they have the wrong people in the wrong place. Fire your ministers, yes, get people with a better brain, Kenya will move.
I actually support him 100%. For the first time, I hear sense from an azimio supporter. Like I'm equally shocked. They should adopt Fanyamambo as part of their think tank. Because for the first time, he said something that makes sense. Yes, yeah. Especially on the issue of importation and his contribution to the Finance Act. I fully support him. Yes. Especially with regard to the fact that most of those things he's talking about, yes, the government has raised taxes on importation. And including even on hides, including even on furniture, yes, including even on those things called toothpicks, and everything we are able to manufacture locally here. The government has actually raised duty on those things. That is why I fully support him, because now he clearly understands what government is doing, yes, and he's on the right path.
Pretty much. Now, gentlemen, question that is essentially around this particular talks. Where should we hold these talks?
Even under a tree. Let us hold the talks even under a tree. Why are we bothering about venues? So that people can have 10 o'clock tea, lunch, 4 o'clock tea. I mean, how do barazas solve their issues in the village? They sit under a tree, they discuss issues that bedevil the community, and they agree to move forward. Venue notwithstanding. But since Fanyamambo must say in a 5-star hotel, maybe you should ask him.
I'll tell you this.
But yes, to me, it doesn't matter.
Professionally,
yes,
I'm a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer who doesn't do litigation. Mediation is my forte. I've even written a book on mediation. And mediation is trying to resolve your disputes by realizing that you're not animals who must fight with guns and bullets and tear gas and kill people and then congratulate the police for killing people. Mediation is about having a conversation from a point of no power play. And one of the things I can say is how you arrange the meeting venue matters. If you arrange the meeting venue in a table where one person looks like he's king, it changes everything. If you arrange the meeting in a place where there will be public interference, it's a problem. There's a time when I think it was a Kriegler commission had come, and they were trying to collect views on post-election violence. And there's one place where some Kenyans did not want that to happen, So I remember at one of the public sittings, some guys went to the streets and took all the street urchins, the chokoras, gave them money and told them, just go and sit in that meeting. Don't touch anybody, don't do anything. So they came to the hall and filled and sat. And it was smelling. It became so uncomfortable that that meeting did not happen. I think what will guide the venue of this meeting is what is needed to be achieved out of them. You have to look at what deliverables you want to get. That determines the venue. So right now I can't say what the venue will be.
Yes.
Because even the Kenya Kwanza administration has got a hidden card. Usidanganywe, all these people are politicians. And mind you, Ruto and Raila were in ODM in 2007. They have worked together. They know each other very well. So, and they probably even also have personal differences they want to sort out right now, in addition to what belongs to Kenyans. So do not come and assume that the only problems that Kenya needs to solve are just Kenyan problems.
Yes.
Even when leaders do not agree, nations go to war. So if those personal problems have to be sorted,
yes.
If they have to bury the hatchet, if they have to hug, if they have to shake hands, let them do that.
Yes.
Because when you hate someone or when you dislike someone, or when you have deep-seated anger and pain and disagreement with someone, no matter what you put on paper, the deep-seated disagreement that you have with someone, because they fell out when they were leaving ODM, and we have never seen their reconciliation. Probably that's what's affecting this country. It's probably a very personal dispute. Look at the formation of Eritrea. What was happening? It was a family dispute. And a whole nation, you know, becomes out of it.
Yes.
So let us not assume that any dispute, whether it belongs to the country or is personal, is trivial. Probably Putin may have attacked Ukraine because he doesn't like the president. And we are probably thinking that it's got to do with resources and whatever, whatever. There are times when people fight you because they don't like you. So when people come and talk of a handshake and leadership coming together as if it's a horrible thing, I worry deeply because they don't understand that there are some times when people do bad things to you because they hate you as a person. So we have to get to the point where we deal with everything.
Doesn't
everything?
If you look at the environment now leading to this conversation, Azimio wanted to start on first. That did not happen. They did not agree on the issues. They similarly are not agreeing on where these conversations are going to take place and how, whether they should be public or not. What is the difference between this and what we saw during the first round of the bipartisan talks? It looks as if it's the same environment.
I have told you there are two things. There are things we must discuss that belong to this nation. But if those leaders have personal differences, those personal differences must be ironed out.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is they affect the nation.
Yes.
When a powerful person has a problem with another powerful person, it can lead the whole nation into war. And that's why, to be a healthy nation, we need to have our problems as Kenyans discussed and sorted. But if also there are two people who do not agree, even husband and wife, their children suffer a lot when husband is not talking to wife. It happens in every family. You know, you have to break it down to the level where Mwananchi will understand. If you're going to live with your children in the same house, you must get to the point where the husband and wife are in communication. Because if the two of them are fighting and then, the two of them have to go and sort out their differences pole pole, kwa bedroom, because they don't concern the children.
Yes.
And then those issues that concern the children, they sit at the dining table with them and tell them, we've decided you're moving from this school to this school because since the UDA government came, it has become very expensive and we are not able to pay for you this private school, so we are taking you to a public school. Those ones you'll discuss in the open with them. They can even put their TikTok on. But on issues between you, husband and wife, and you having been seen in a car carrying another woman, you'll not discuss in front of your children. So it's the same thing with this nation, that Raila Odinga and William Ruto have got personal problems of their own that they need to go and sort out at Serena. And we don't want to know walikosania nini, because it might be very personal. You have no idea. Maybe at Louisiana Gary or something. But the things that concern Kenyans, those ones can be brought to the public light. So all I'm trying to say, in every conflict, there are two tiers to it. There is a tier where there are things that are very personal between people. Like now, William Ruto and the former president Uhuru Kenyatta, we all know it's not a secret. They are not in very good terms. Do you think those are things that Kenyans want to know? This was President DP. That is a very private affair. Waende wakae na huko Masai Mara waongee. Because it is imperative that they be in good terms for this nation to move on properly. Because Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta has got his supporters. William Ruto has got his supporters. And they carry with these emotions everywhere they go. To unite these nations, hizo personal problems wakae kwa hoteli waongee. Hatutaki kujua walikosania nini. You have no idea what these people do together. They even do business together, all of them. Sisi ndio tunagongana huku bure juu yao, but they own some companies together. And then now those matters that concern Kenya have to be brought to the public limelight. Tuongee mambo ya unga vizuri.
Gaza. Mr. Mugai, just like we started, the issues to be discussed are neither here nor there. They have not agreed on it. When you look at where, they seem not to have agreed on it. On when this was supposed to start, well, there was sort of disagreement until we got a date when the inaugural talks are going to begin. Whether this is how these talks are going to go, again, there seems to be some disagreement over that particular issue. What tempo is the second round of negotiations setting? Is it not like the bipartisan talks where the same issues again cropped up?
You know, Simba, what I find the challenge of these talks, especially the first bipartisan talks, is that so long as the main actor is not part of the talks, we are going to keep stalling. Let me take you back to 2007. When Kofi Annan came, and when Benjamin Mkapa and the eminent African persons came to mediate, they realized that so long as they were dealing with Martha Karua, so long as they were dealing with William Ruto then, you remember when at those talks, then the talks were not going, they were not going anywhere. It is finally at the last moment when they decided, let us engage the main actors, it is when we had a solution. And I want to say this because I knew there was trouble in paradise when in the first bipartisan talks, both parties put up teams that even in terms of public perception, they did not appear very serious. You know, even Azimio were complaining that the people you've given us, including at one time, they put a Jubilee member and there was a tussle, Jubilee is part of Azimio, no, Jubilee is part of. So those were the first bipartisan talks. Now the second round of negotiations, we have also hit a challenge because then there are actors who've been very active and very vocal, such as Jeremiah Kioni and Martha Karua, who've been left out of the talks. But even though they've been left out, the person who's been put there, Kalonzo, to represent the interests of Azimio and their supporters, I still foresee a challenge. And what is the challenge? The challenge is this. And if you look at the agitation of the former Prime Minister, you can really tell he wants this thing to end. Whatever it is his goal, whatever his goal is, I do not know. But you can tell he wants this thing, the outcome to come tomorrow, not 40 days later, not 50 days later. The thing is, so long as Raila is not at the center stage, then we can have as many talks as we want, but we will not get anywhere. In fact, what is most likely going to happen, very soon, you know, if you always see Sifuna saying something, then Robert Alai comes out and says something, it tells you now the boss has sent some people to go and lay ground for some other things. Very soon, you will start seeing people start saying, you know, Kalonzo is ceding too much in the negotiation. He has taken his true character of being a watermelon. Very soon you will start seeing people attacking Kalonzo Musyoka in terms of how he is leading the talks. But this is what I foresee as the outcome of those talks. Because there is what is in the public domain, and there is what, you see, there is what we see in the public, and there is what eventually in terms of political machinations will come out. What I foresee is this. If you look at the recommendations the president made when he got into power, when he wrote a letter to parliament, and you look at some of the things that Azimio is requesting, I foresee there is need for a plebiscite in the foreseeable future. Now you do not want to go into a referendum. You remember when we went into a referendum during Kibaki's time and the government lost. Now when the government lost the referendum, it was a sign of things to come in the general elections of 2007, which actually led us to chaos. And so the president wouldn't want to attempt something that the government might actually get to flop. But if you look at for them to agree on those issues, then you need Raila on the table. Now, at what point you bring Raila in is the key thing. So right now, you must allow the talks to play out whichever way they will play out. But the solution, if there is any solution whatsoever, if there is any solution, at the end of the day will come from, and you see, I like the tactical approach the president has taken. You remember the outcome of the court proceedings on the issue of BBI. Part of it was that the president, in his capacity as president, cannot initiate, you know, a referendum or a constitutional change. You remember that it was part of the outcome of the court processes.
Yes.
And what the president has done now, he's taken a back seat and he's taken a hard stance, if Mount Kenya tour was anything to go by, against whatever it is that is being discussed. So he's not interested. He's not interested in quotes. And therefore what I foresee is that these talks will go nowhere. That is what I foresee. But behind the scenes, there will be agreement. And that is why I always say, don't allow yourself to die right now, because you might not be alive to see the outcomes of what these people discuss behind closed doors. You might die prematurely. You might go to a protest and die, and yet the thing has nothing to do with you in the meantime. And therefore, what I foresee, these talks will be headed nowhere.
Yes.
It will end in disarray at the end of the day. But behind the scenes, something is being worked out between the two actors. It might not be a handshake. It might not lead to handshake, but it might lead to something that might require working together to change some things.
Pretty much. Once we come back then, one thing has come out, and this is according to Bumula Member of Parliament, Wamboka Wanami, who has castigated President William Ruto over what he termed as double speak and dishonesty. Now, speaking in his constituency, Wanami now wants Raila Odinga to call off the talks with the government and resume the weekly anti-government demonstrations as the Kenya Kwanza coalition remain uncommitted. Let's take a look at that particular story. And I'll be taking notes from it. Once we come back, is it true that the president is not at all committed to these talks? Let's take a look at that story.
From this plan that the president has.
Ian Keitani, Lookuptv. During his 5-day tour of the Mount Kenya region, on the second day, President William Ruto toured Sagana State Lodge, assuring the country that his government has made the necessary arrangements and now the economy is stable.
Niliwaeleza ya kwamba kazi yetu ya kwanza.
Wewe ukiwa rais kuwa mtu wa kuunganisha watu. Si ndio? Huyu mzee akifinya button unatetemeka paka kwa roho. Si mumeona juzi? Tunasema tunataka dialogue. Wakati mzee amekubali dialogue, rais anaanza kupiga kifua. Kutusi Raila. Mumeona jana akipiga kifua akitusi Raila. Na yeye ndiye amesema nataka dialogue. Raila has nothing to lose. In fact, mahali imefika mimi naambia Raila, kaa ngumu bwana. Hey, wacha mwanaume ndiye akupatie heshima. Kaa ngumu utingize yeye sasa mpaka kwa nafsi. Yeah. Kenya ni kila mtu. Sio sawa? Raila kae. Ametingiza yeye siku 3 peke yake mzee. Rais tumbo kwa joto. Nasema tafuta Raila my brother, my brother. Raila mkubali na kupitia Paulo Lese kwa Passager. Kukubali tuongee, anaanza kupiga kifua. Akiwa huko, hamtanitisha. Hapana, Raila call of dialogue. Wanaume waonane. Yeah. Call of dialogue Raila Odinga. Hao watu wakupatie heshima. Kama Kenya itakuwa hivyo, wacha wanaume wamenyana.
That's it. So let's summarize that particular conversation on that particular point for Bumula, Member of Parliament, Wamboka Wanami. He says that every time Raila Odinga agrees to go to the negotiation table, then the president goes on the side and starts chest thumping and abusing him. That every time he goes to the streets, then the president starts looking for Raila Odinga to talk. That in his view, he should cancel these talks and go right to the streets so that he can keep on pressing that particular button until the president remains committed?
I think Kenya Kwanza doesn't learn from history. That's the only problem they have. President Moi took Raila Amolo Odinga and threw him into prison for more than 8 years.
Yes.
In the name of taking him to Bondo. Is he in Bondo? He finished. Then I remember the Mount Kenya community, I was one of them when we were voting for Kibaki. We were saying, sasa tu miaka 10, huyu mzee atakuwa ameenda kwa Bondo, ataisha, we will forget him. Kibaki came. Kibaki did the first term. The second term he was running a Nusu Mkate government with Raila Amolo Odinga. Did Raila go to Bondo? Because I had the president saying he's going to take him to Bondo. Then came Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. After the first term, I remember, if you remember what was the conversation that was going on in Mount Kenya, and they were calling him Kemodo, even the president, the former president admitted. After 2013, they said Raila is going straight to Bondo. Is he in Bondo? 2017, they told us the same thing. In fact, he was more spoken about in the news by now none other than the then deputy president than any other politician within the country. Today, the Mount Kenya tour was a Raila Amolo Odinga tour. His name was mentioned more times than dams, hospitals, schools, mortuaries, and every other thing that our people need. The handshake, the bipartisan talks, they were discussed about. The demonstrations were discussed about by none other than the head of state many more times than they spoke about the problems that face the people of Mount Kenya. In fact, even the mention of the rice was very small. Most of what the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua said was all about Raila Amolo Odinga. This is the man that people have taken to Bondo in every other election. Now you're saying you're going to take him to Bondo again, and before you realize, the nation, the president, the deputy president, every other person is going to be talking more about Raila Amolo Odinga than any other human being.
Yes.
So we need to get to the point where we need to learn from history and say, Raila Amolo Odinga is not the kind of person that you're saying you're taking to Bondo. Find alternative ways to have a conversation. I keep saying, they say he messed up government. And I worry deeply at people who think like that. The 2017-2022 government was constituted, and I remember the president saying that it was a 50-50 between him and William Ruto. How many of William Ruto ministers were fired to create room for Raila Amolo Odinga's ministers? So if there was a mistake in any of the ministries that were headed by the ministers that William Samoei Ruto brought to government, you still want to blame it on Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta? If by the time they made a handshake, if there is one human being who came from Raila's side and joined government and started making decisions in government, we want to know his name. Raila Amolo Odinga himself was made a High Commissioner for Infrastructure in Southern Sudan, not here. So they keep saying Raila Amolo Odinga spoiled. How? When you have 50% of government and you are still complaining that government is not proper. And I keep saying, the Kenya Kwanza administration, I think they read the book of Lamentations so much. And this should be called the government of lamentations, because every day they wake up, they are lamenting about something. You come and tell us Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta is financing demos. What do you want us to do? The police are yours, the police stations are yours, the police land cruisers are yours. Everything that we gave the state of, everything that the state needs to arrest such a person you have. You come again, there's lamentations. Raila is bringing mandamano, Raila is doing that. Then we ask you, you are a government of lamentations. You need to take the book of Lamentations and make it part of your constitution, because you're telling us things that we cannot do as wananchi. You come and tell us, oh, bei ya unga iko juu. What do you want wananchi to do? You come and tell us, these people are calling us to talks. What do you want us to do? It's a government of lamentations, and you need to move from there and become a government that does what kings do. Lead the nation.
Just quickly on Bumula Member Parliament, Wanami, saying this guy is dishonest. Get out.
One, I am glad I am not an Azimio supporter. I'm actually very glad, because then I can carry my head wherever I go and actually get to use it. And that is not to be derogatory, but it's just a point of observation. There's a book written by I think the name is Michelle Arong. It is Our Turn to Eat. And what Raila has mastered, it is his ability to force himself on the table when people are eating, and not just sit on the table, but the audacity even to order your own meal while you are at the table is something that Raila has mastered. Raila must learn from one Kenneth Jindo Matiba, because as we keep saying, history is very important in this country. In 1992, he contested for presidency, and in fact, that time he put up a formidable campaign in 1992. But for some miraculous or some voodoo or some juju or for some reason, he did not win that election. And so they found themselves in a court of law, just like Azimio found themselves. And of course, we all know that he lost. The court ruled against him. Now, at that time, Matiba enjoyed a lot of support, and he had the ability to call for mass actions, to call for people to go to maandamano while you're in the sitting room, and you allow other people's children to go and get shot by people whom you've organized to make sure they shoot them. And when Kenneth Matiba was interviewed and he was asked why he did not take the route that the king of protest took, he said that there is a time when the country is bigger than the individual. And I want to tell Kenyans that even those who support Raila, they must make Raila understand that there comes a time when the state is more important and our cohesion is more important than the aspirations of an individual man. Now, what Kenya is suffering is consequently as a result of rewarding bad behavior, because that is typically bad behavior. Every time we go into an election, you remember even in 2012-13, when the court nullified the elections, and the court ruled in Raila's favor, Raila was advised by his team, the likes of Orengo and Atiende Omolo, they advised him not to run again.
Yes.
Even when it was clear the court had ruled in his favor. And therefore, it tells me that this is not a man really who actually wants to win. He doesn't have what it takes to win an election, but unfortunately, because he must be on the table, he has held this country captive for so many years. And I keep telling some people, if you are a good reader of the Bible, as my friend have said in the book of Lamentation, if you read the epistles of Paul, there is one time that Paul was really asking God to remove a thorn in the flesh from him.
Yes.
And God told him, no, that is yours to deal with. Sometimes I imagine that this country was given Raila to become our thorn in the flesh. That every time we ask God to remove this thorn in our flesh, whether we take him to Bondo, as people say, or whether some people claim they are going to assassinate him, or whichever manner, then God tells us, no, that is your thorn in the flesh to deal with for you as Kenyans for the foreseeable future. I think that is the only way I can look at it.
Pretty much. Let's end it like this. And I will be asking you straight questions that have just come in directly to our viewers. Thank you very much. Fanyamabo, you have just a minute to respond to this particular one. All right, George, thank you very much for watching this morning. Listen, could you ask Fanyamabo if he speaks from a point of hate as opposed to a point of critique?
I have no hate for anyone. And if I hate people, I don't talk about them, because then I would give them my valuable airtime and energy and breath which God has given me for free.
Yes.
So I don't speak from a point of hate. I have no hate for anyone, but there are things I hate. And one of them is incompetence. If you are a person who looks for excellence, you must hate incompetence. So we have no problem. We have no time to hate people. But there are certain traits, there are certain things that a nation must never stomach. And one of the things you should never stomach is someone who is incompetent to run a place, running a place. Some of the ministers we have in this government are incompetent. That incompetence is what we hate. We don't hate the ministers.
Pretty much. Yes. Good. I've got one question. Judy is asking this morning. This is a very particular one. What message do you have for the people of Nyeri who are feasting this Sunday, but they've woken up to the same problems that are bedeviling Kenyans this morning? Unemployment.
I would say we attend weddings and we eat and we go home. We attend funerals, we eat and we go home. I mean, eating so long as you're alive is a continuous process.
I can add. Well, take this gentleman back to the time that he joined us this morning in the studio at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms for all those comments that came in and the questions. Thank you very much. Guess what? It doesn't stop here. We take a tiny breather. Once we come back with another conversation. Good morning.
Hi, and welcome to Tujenge Home. Your #1 show when it comes to all things architecture, real estate, property development, interior design. You get it right here on Tujenge Home.
When the food is ready.
You want to